Cloud. There we go. And broadcast. Okay. Are we live? I think we are. Okay.
I still can't do my video.
Your video. That's interesting. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Give me just a minute here. We're trying to figure out how to get Mo's video here. Are you still having some trouble with that, Mo?
Yeah, can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Oh, I don't know what that.
Maybe you can invite me?
Sorry, everybody. We're just having a couple technical difficulties here. I don't know. I'm not sure, Mo. I'm really sorry.
All right. Well, I'm here.
Yes, we can hear you. Can everyone hear? Can everyone hear Mo? We're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep working on it. Okay. Well, in the meantime, thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for attending this webinar. We're really excited. Thank you all for using the chat. If you have any questions, you can feel free to use the chat. There's also Q&A. And so without further ado, I will let Mo take it away.
All right.
And if everyone wants to put, I love to see, sorry, Mo. We love to see where everyone is coming from. So if you want to put in the chat where you are watching from, we're in San Diego here. And Mo, you can go ahead and take it away.
All right. So yes, welcome to this webinar presented by MusicWorks, the role of relationships and coaching the caregiver in crisis. So my colleague here, Emily Nordhues, and I are so excited to share with you all of our experiences in these last few months, especially from the perspective of Emily, who is a newer professional and one of our neurodevelopmental specialists. So I'll let Emily kind of introduce herself a little bit.
Yeah, hi, so my name is Emily Nordhues. I am a music therapist with MusicWorks in San Diego. This is my first job out of internship, and I have been here for about a year, which is very exciting. And in that year, I have spent working mostly with neurodivergent individuals, which has been so much fun. It's something that honestly I did not have a lot of experience with before, and I have learned so much in this year that I have been working, and a lot of what I have learned, so much of what I have learned from Mo. So I'm very excited for all of you to also be able to have the opportunity to learn from her today. So I'll let her talk a little bit more about herself.
Okay, someone said that if I try to leave the meeting and join again, this can happen. So let me just try it really quick, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Okay. Sorry, everybody. We got some technical difficulties. Happens on Zoom, right? It's kind of been a learning curve for everybody. Thank you all. You're very sweet. Thank you so much for bearing with us. This is actually something that we will be talking about a little bit too, is that it's a learning curve for absolutely everybody.
Okay, so I'm just going to try to start my video. And still don't see it.
I'm so sorry, Mel.
No worries, no worries. Here, let me just get back to it. Thank you for the encouragement. I appreciate it. All right, well, let me just kind of introduce myself briefly. My name is Mo, or Maureen Dinsmore, you can see it on there. And also, So I am actually the Director of Neurodevelopment and Rehabilitation Services at MusicWorks. And so I am so privileged to be able to be here and present this information on behalf of MusicWorks. So further ado, yeah, I guess just welcome to this. I've actually had the privilege of working with neurodivergent individuals for almost 17 years. And I've been in the field for over 10, but some of the most really informative years as a professional were my last 4. And so just a little bit about my journey, I began my training in ABA, working in the home environment with a boy with Downs and ASD. And then later, my first job actually as a music therapist was at an autism day treatment center. And so I created, according to the need that I saw, sibling groups and groups with caregivers. And so then, I later received my certification in NMT and moved to San Diego and practiced neurologic music therapy for about 8 years with all populations and ages. And, I just love learning. I love advocating for the research on music and neuroscience. And honestly, this is still a huge part of why I'm a music therapist. And so with my background so heavily in protocols and structured interventions, I felt as though I wasn't really addressing the whole person. And that was especially when addressing psychosocial goals. And so that really led to 4 years ago, I began my graduate studies. And during that time, of course, you need to choose your research topics. So I thought, well, I better make this worth my time, my energy, and the money. So I'm going to address the most uncomfortable times I have as a music therapist. And so that was generally working with individuals with autism, spectrum disorder, in experiencing dysregulation. And then you add, caregivers to this, the relationship dynamics, it really does make it a difficult feat. So I then had the opportunity during my studies at Berkeley, providing and having the opportunity actually of a lifetime, really, because I was interviewing leading experts of various approaches and advanced competency in multiple models, like Nordhues Robbins, DIR floor time was one, NMT, and so eclectic as well. And then of course, yeah, so most of those. And so about 5 different participants. And so I've been reading their research, I followed them throughout my career, and it was really life-changing in not only my professional life, because I learned of the DIR floor time approach, which has further opened my eyes, not only my eyes, but really my heart to approaching development with the neuroscience, of course, as well as being really informed by developmental approaches where regulation is foundational. And so this approach really furthered my confidence, which then helped in my co-regulation in my sessions. And then that ultimately opened my clients up due to my authenticity and creativity being even further enhanced. So the best part about the DIR floor time approach, which is what we're going to talk about really is the meat potatoes of today, is that it helps us learn how to coach the caregivers and make music in an interactive music experience for everyone. So this is just a huge gem of joy right now during our social distancing. So with that being said, we're going to go into our outline for today. And so in our outline, we're going to go through a description of DIR floor time and the approach, how DIR floor time is different from others and applicable now, especially including the caregivers, how to implement this model into your practice with any population, which we've all been doing here at MusicWorks. The telehealth switch, and that was a switch, coaching the caregivers and helping them prepare, helping us actually prepare, because we're going to have to help them initially. And then the strategies that we've used along the way, and also some of the hurdles. And so we're going to have a fantastic perspective of on the switch from our newer MTBC. And so, so Emily's going to tell us a little bit about some of her hurdles and what she's done to be creative to navigate those waters. And so some tips for telehealth music therapy sessions with neurodiverse individuals, since that is really what most of our clients are have, but you know, it's really, again, this is inclusive, and I hope to have a really great, you know, discussion at the end where we can all be part of it and really hopefully get a little bit of perspective outside of this. And so here is the DIR model. What is the DIR model? So this was developed by Dr. Stanley Greenspan. And so this is really taking the whole team of an individual and creating a program that is tailored to that person's challenges and strengths, very individualized. And so we have here the D, the I, and we have the R. And we see that in the middle, it is driven by emotion. Emotions are the core capacities. It's through affect. It's through wanting that authenticity of wanting to be there, being with our clients, being with those people. And then also, I mean, this is really also wanting to be with the caregivers as well if we're doing telehealth. So we're going to go over the D, which is developmental capacities, which you can go back actually.
Oh, sorry.
The functional, emotional, developmental capacities. I'm going to call them the FEDCs. It's a lot less lingo. So we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about the individual differences and the unique profile, the I, the big I, and then the big R, which is going to be, I think, the bulk of what we do is the relationship-based support systems, taking those into consideration. So that was the DIR. So now we're on the floor time. Okay, so this one is taking this technique that's considered the cornerstone and the engine. It drives the model through this developmental process. So it's following the person's lead and interest, and it's not just following people around the room and just kind of going with whatever they want. It's really just seeing what are they interested in, what is a need of theirs, and then by number 2, joining that person's world. Just pulling them into that shared world where we are together here in order to help them, you know, coach them up to master each of these FEDCs. Okay, so then we put them all together. What do you got? We have a model that identifies where a person is functioning within the framework of 6 levels. So there are 6 levels here, but there are so many more. I'm only trained as a provider in the proficient level, which goes up to the 6. And so there, I think, are like 7 more. So I can definitely see a lot of the people I work with, we go way higher than this. And we're gonna go over kind of what they are, but they're called together the creation of the developmental ladder. So this developmental ladder, you know, I'm so lucky that I had my husband, who's a graphic artist, put this nice diagram together so I could present this. I've done it before. You'll see it in some of our materials. You've probably seen it around. And it's a really awesome way to kind of look at how we need a basic foundation that is needed before we can really go all the way up to 6 and above. And so we do call these capacities. The capacities you see on the left, they used to be called milestones, so you might have heard that. They did change that, so it's now called, yes, the capacities. And so we're gonna just talk really briefly. You can all read it, so I'm not gonna, you know, read everything for you. But I just wanna kind of talk a little bit about what these FEDCs are in, you know, just a bit more detail. And so let me, oh, you can go back. We're gonna stay on this. Okay, so number 1 is the regulation. So to be able to, you know, co-regulate, to be able to have some emotional attunement, to be able to really look at someone and see if they're able to self-soothe. That's a big part of just being human. So that is our regulation, and just having an interest for wanting to be in this world, being in this session, being with me. So that is the first piece, because we know that stimulation can really create disorganization. So this is basic foundational, and we'll keep it on here, and I'll just tell you a little bit more about 2, which is the engagement. And Dr. Stanley Greenspan actually calls this the falling in love stage. And it's kind of where, you know, we find we're making then more purposeful interactions and connections. And so if someone can follow attention, or they can feel trust or reward, if they can sense that they have a purpose, the person has a purpose in and a use for their actions. So it's really true communication, which comes when the child is part of this shared world. This is that, that 2. And a little bit more about, well, let's move all the way up to 3, because once we can have the ability to initiate communication, then that shows that we're going to have purposeful communication. So there's intention. We want to have a dialogue. There's the opening and circles of communication, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, is I'm giving you something that I know you really want, and the child or person takes it. So it shows that they want that. So that's opening a circle, and then they had closed to that circle. And so we really want this, we know that this is essential for all human interaction. And so during this phase, we look for about 10 to 15 circles going. And so that's how we can really know that we're getting things cooking. And so we're going to go up to 4, which is the shared problem solving. And the shared problem solving, that is a little bit more of, you know, creating complex gestures to distinguish facial expressions and body postures. So closing circles with wide ranges of feeling, just continuous flow of circles, and also just kind of working together to maybe make the ocean drum move, or being able to maybe work together to write a song. I mean, that goes up then to 5, which is creation of ideas. So that's when we really need that. We start looking at our creativity and being able to pretend and just say, hey, take this magic seed, and they'll take it, and even though there's nothing there, and they'll be like, yes, I have it, and wanting to then, you know, plant that seed and make it grow into a pizza tree or something like that. So we're starting to do that. I literally do that all the time, and I love it because kids love it, food. And then we go kind of up the ladder into the logical thinking. So being able to express a range of emotions and logical ideas, answering some of the what, when, where, and whys. So then also just kind of understanding space and time, which is so abstract. So a lot of these, this is the foundation, and that's kind of, we get up there to the 6, and then we try to get that cooking, and some really great stuff happens. So let's move on. I'm gonna just kind of show then how this really does go along with the basic needs of human beings, really, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this shows the similarities and importance of, you know, we just need those needs met, and we can't engage with these aspects of life if we don't. And this was actually developed by into a blog that I'll be sharing at the very end about how to rock floor time anywhere. So she talks about like the medical setting and the hospice setting. So this is where that came from. You'll see that at the end. So when I first present, you know, DI or floor time to caregivers, they just want their loved ones to talk or speak, or I just want them to be able to write sentences or read, which is great, excellent, excellent. But sometimes we're just not there yet. And so I must reference, you know, all of these diagrams and definitely visual representations of what we need. So a strong foundation, we need those roots. And that's what I say to some of my kids too. You can't see me, but I'm tapping my legs and saying, okay, where are your roots? Where are your roots? Find your roots. That shows that we're kind of, you know, regulated. We're ready to kind of move into that next piece. And we're in that green zone. I love the zone, so I'm gonna just put a little bit of that in there. But we do need that strong foundation. And so what's cool, if you look at all the different roots, they're each are individual differences that we're gonna address of how we process information. And so these individual differences we'll be talking about a little bit more in the moment, but you see we need that. We need the affect of the sun. We need that to be able to grow and to be able to do the math, and, you know, then developing even empathy. You can see empathy up by an apple up there. And so it's really, it is just looking again when I'm trying to present this model to people who might be new teachers, educators, and students, it's a really great way to just give them this tree. Oh yeah, that is the learning tree. So, and then this is yeah, thanks. And then this is another representative of just how our body can't function unless we look at it on a multiple piece of levels, especially our central nervous system. And so with this, we need to look at sensory is first, and that's regulation, and it's all the senses, which is gonna bring us actually into our next slide. So just kind of talking a little bit more about the Ds and what DR floor time is. Caregivers are actually the cornerstone. This is a parent-mediated intervention. Hopefully, we can't always do that, and they don't always want to participate. This has to be an individualized thing where it's dependent on what their preferences are, what their goals are. We have to treat each family as a different, system. And so it's the family, it's not just the person. But sometimes they just want to drop them off. It's fine. I've done it too, and I can DIR that as well. That's fine. And so, especially when we're trying to build rapport, and that's a big piece. And so, number two, so including the person's interdisciplinary team, the OT, the SOP, the PT, the teacher, but then the parents too. And that's, we're going to go into that individualized profile because we're with them for sometimes 30 minutes once a week, once a month. They're with them 24/7. And so we need to start looking at this process. The process of what we're doing is we're going to emphasize this way over than the content. And so we know that it does take time to build and establish a rapport, of course. But if we have this as kind of a map to navigate how we're doing this, it's helpful in some of those uncertain situations. Number four, the surface behaviors. So, and, compliance. And so this goes into a whole other spiel. And of course, I came from, my background in ABA. I've very much seen so much great stuff with that and how it's developed over the years too, since I was, I'm older, a lot older now. And also I valued that when we have to teach hard things. So, but first, what we kind of look at it in DIR floor time, what we do look at, I'll be very confirmative about that, is that behavior is communication. So there's a reason behind that behavior. And so again, when I was trying to implement, more behavioral approaches and stuff where I'm the boss, I'm the teacher, I'm the one that I'm going to tell you what to do. And I wasn't that way because if you could see me, I'm not a really mean person. But it was just my intuition had always kind of led me into a new way of like, I don't think this is really how I'm going to do this. I don't know how to do this. And so I was looking for answers. So it's a different model. And of course, my own approach is really taking this model and addressing the challenging behaviors like self-injury. What if they're hurting themselves and hurting others? Safety, what if they're running away and they're nonverbal? So just using also those serious teaching approaches with our whole support team to really create a reliance on knowing that the more that they see it in our affect, and also, social stories, of course, I've done that, but then we take it to the next level. I say ABA all the way until you're there and you're relying on the prompting or you're not generalizing. So how do we make that go further? And that's through this process. And that's taking into consideration too, where they are in their capacities, which are foundational behaviors. Sorry, I rant a lot on that. You can go ahead. So we're really seeking to understand the core deficits rather than those behaviors. And that's looking at the individual person, the I. And so, and through relating, communicating. And so we're gonna get into, yes, the I soon. Remove or bypass, yeah, like I'm gonna talk really loud and slow to you because you're nonverbal. That doesn't make sense because they might be able to process you, but maybe we do need to slow it down just a bit with our tempo or with our rhythm, make sure we're not getting overstimulated and we're just then filtering because we're anxious. And so, yes, again, we'll be looking at the auditory processing challenges and things like that. So again, the developmental ladder, that's what we did. And the purpose is to coach the person to move up the ladder, strong foundation, so we can spark that creativity. And again, in a nutshell, because that's so much information. Okay, so sensory regulation, it's intrinsically related to our emotion. So sensory, emotion, and then also we need to be part of that shared world. We're looking for affect, reciprocal play, opening, closing circles and getting it cooking, pretend play then, and connection, and, you know, at the end, compromising, answering why. Okay. So I'm just gonna share this because this is just a way that I had to, in my training, look at myself and clients and also caregivers through these FEDCs. And I had to take each capacity and then just kind of show if they've mastered it or if there's constrictions. And then I have to look at, hey, am I a good fit for this person? And then what we're doing now, most of us are adding the caregiver, which is a whole other, you know, triad of dynamics, quad. I was trying to think it's quad. I couldn't even put it together right now. But anyways, it kind of shows then we look at each person at that level and see if we're good fits. And so we'll just go through maybe one more. This client gave me permission, but I'm still just trying to let's stay at this one. So this is the example actually of a 24-year-old client with ASD. And so not only do we look at all of this, of course, but we had to take into consideration a lot of, extra dynamics. And so luckily for like building bridges, even though this client has constrictions in this area, and we saw that through like songwriting and everything, but you would like say, oh, my friend is autistic like me, and you know, he's a drummer and a good musician like me, and I just want to support his band. So it's pretty cool. So seeing all this is how we're like building those bridges, just as an example. And then luckily the mom also likes to discuss, you know, creative ideas and solutions. And so it's been kind of a good way to kind of see that outside of music, they're going to be a good fit. Okay, so now we're on to the I. Okay, here it is, yes. So the background, the history, we've got you know, family environment, but culture, so important. Again, we're taking into consideration each person's strengths and stretches. I like to say that instead of challenges sometimes. And so I also look at the caregiver strengths and stretches too, because we have to work as a team. We're also then looking at the sensory system. This is a huge, huge piece of processing, modulating, and discriminating information so our brain can process and our bodies can experience the information and not be overwhelmed and go into dysregulation. So again, this is the roots of the learning, the tree of learning diagram, and you've got all the senses, but also I like to really point out proprioception and how your body's feeling in space, how we can use instruments and music to help support that. Vestibular as well is so important as far as our balance, and are we able to even do the movements at home around a couch or with the table in front of us. These are the things we're looking at when we're setting up our space to do therapy. And so visual spatial processing, if I know they're, you know, how they are taking in information this way through all these different ways, this is how we can then provide a good way to tailor our experiences to best support their individual profile. And so one last thing, of course, support systems we'll get to, but also trauma. Trauma is a big piece, you know, looking at if people have an adverse childhood experience. This can be different for everyone. And, you know, we just need to take into consideration that if we see something, knowing that it's not always reflective just on me as the clinician. Oh, this is a reflection of how I'm a bad therapist or something like that, if something comes up. But knowing too, it can come up in our conversations. It comes up in my songwriting. It comes up in a lot of different ways, especially now in telehealth when I don't have the parent on the line. And I did a telehealth piano lesson with a typical developing individual, and I had to report some things because, you know, and get support as well for what was shared. this is a time to really look at, these are things that are going to come out probably even more so heightened than when they're coming into your clinic or your room. And so I want to give an example, which is the next slide, which is looking definitely then at the caregiver too, and their response, if they're under responsive or over responsive. And so again, this is just another way that I had to kind of look at how I also take in auditory stimuli, how I, prefer, natural light over fluorescent light. So that might still make me a good fit, but so anyways, we can go through these slides pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, so yes, oral, motor, tactile, good, yep. And so then, yeah, we can also say mixed, especially the vestibular input. Hey, they're coordinated to dance in lion drumming costumes, so they've got good, balance and coordination to work with the tail because she's the head. And then, yeah, looking at then, the mother actually partners with the daughter in the lion dancing. So they're a really good fit because they coordinate their actions a lot. Go, and yeah, there's so many. You look at strengths and challenges of all these areas. And so let's go to the blue slide.
And Mo, can I mention, I really like the wording that you had used, the language for strengths and stretches instead of, you use stretches instead of challenges. Is that what that was meant for?
Yeah, because I think we're always growing. We all have stretches. We all have things. And, sometimes it's going to be a stretch on how we're going to even be able to hit that developmental ladder capacity because it's too bright in here. And so, yeah, it's a stretch. So I just have to work a little bit harder. And so understanding that, I don't call them weaknesses because there's so many strengths. And so this slide kind of is a big part of DIR floor time. It's a lot of videotaping and watching yourself, which after even being a therapist for so long was so hard. I hate listening to my voice. I probably won't listen to this webinar. Yeah. So, it's hard. And then I had to present it to about 50 people who are all across the world and get their input and insight. So these are some things that I had to look at, that it's really important that we're taking into consideration how we are interacting. So these are some of the things I really need to hone in on. I got to go with the groove and be more in the moment, less directing and just do it, and then not presenting too many ideas. Let them kind of be creative, but coach them if they need some support. Silence is fine because we have full total communication through our music, through our body language and our affect. So I hope you're getting some of that passion that I have for this through my voice. Also presuming competency to instigate creativity. So I always presume competence, but then I support when I see that there might be some needs for support, and then fade. And then we can then help mentor and guide them and challenge them up this ladder so we can then really feel within that one moment, that music making moment, that we're all connected and feel supported. That's a big word I've used. And so looking at my area of focus, am I focusing on my notes too much? Should I be more so, I'm missing her look at me because I'm focused on my chords. And then I wouldn't have noticed that or known that if I hadn't videotaped. So again, it's a really big piece of DIR floor time. So that was the I. Ready for the R. It's based on affect. Well, we're all based on affect. I think it's all based on affect, but knowing too that this is, we really look at the limbic system. The limbic system is our primitive way of wanting to be in the moment. We're authentic. I want to be with you. You can see that we've got that gleam in the eye. The gleam in the eye is huge. And especially too, it's based on affect because I have a hard time sometimes when someone tells me no, but especially a child. However, it's about respect too. And it's looking at things another way. And especially for those who are nonverbal, if they're told they can't say no, I don't know, that's what can lead to some experiences of trauma that may be different for everybody. And just to highlight that, that's something that I really learned. And And so it's really helped me really go along too with really relying on my authenticity as a really huge factor that drives this. Okay, so what we're all feeling. So this is Emily and I in our telehealth sessions, and you've probably seen this. It's only 30 minutes, or 30 minutes, 30 seconds, sorry. Yeah, it's a great one. Take notes. And so you might have seen it around, and I'm just gonna kind of talk, and once it pops up, I'll let us all just
so as some of you guys might know, I'm a music teacher, and I found that one of the best ways that I can process the whole transition to online learning and teaching is to write a song. So I wrote a song. I'd like to share that with you guys now. Here we go.
Oh my goodness. So yes, this was so my experience. I was so anxious and nervous to be seen, you know, and doing this over telehealth when I relied so much on my relationship with the individual. So, and this is what my sister's experiencing in this next slide. And so I try to do telehealth with them to help support them, because this was this morning. She just sent this to me. And so I was like, this is perfect. Thank you for sending this. She didn't even know I was presenting today. So again, we're all in it together, as we've heard so many times. And so we need to really look at our own mental health, because there are all these factors that I know have come up for me that will, I think also most of you have probably had come up for yourselves. You want to go forward into some of these. So we've probably had to deal with some more preparation, really understanding new family dynamics, and like how to work with an SOP over Skype has been, or telehealth has been amazingly hard. And so losing connection, knowing that, you know, everyone's stressed and we got our limits. We're all working too out of our limbic system, our amygdala, and we're trying to do the best we can with, this is something that Emily tells me all the time, with what we have. And so we have all these technology questions, as you experienced at the beginning of this webinar. Also cost, do I charge the same? Or what if they, you know, get charged from a center, like we have the regional center, can I still bill that for what this is? A schedule, some of them want 2 times a week instead of 1 time a week, and shorter sessions. So how do we navigate that so we're not creating more stress on ourselves, but then feeling like we're putting so much stress on these caregivers that are just getting by 1 day at a time, probably one hour at a time.
Yeah, definitely. There you go.
So again, why should we coach? So here are some benefits that we can give to our caregivers. So these are things too that I've had to provide when I start this and prepare this. So we can really help support the caregiver's mental health by doing this too, because maybe we're helping them provide a way to interact and play with if it's a child, or play with whoever, with their, I mean, I do this, you know, with my husband over, you know, we're definitely, this again can be anyone, but it's supporting because we're connected and we're trying to just help say, I hear you, this is hard, and we're just kind of hearing them. And then of course, by increasing the dosage, like I said, if we're doing, you know, 30 minutes once a week, now we're helping to tailor their interactions. So they're going to help feel a shift, which might be really uncomfortable at first, which we'll talk about, but then without increasing the cost, they're really then weaving this into their day-to-day interactions. So, okay, so caregiver stress, just a little bit, it is higher in those of loved ones with neurodiverse differences. And also then generally caregivers with typically developing individuals. And so knowing this is just good information for us to know, like even though, even more so those with ASD and parents. And so, you know, this is definitely something that, that we are looking at and need to know beforehand. Here's a research article. So looking at and continuing with caregiver stress, the mothers and fathers actually also have reported same total levels of stress. However, their patterns come from different root causes. And so mothers might likely report parent stress associated with amount and how much they have to care and provide. Fathers, it can be different. And this is just some of the studies that are out there for more likely to report parent stress with emotional closeness, maybe not feeling connected to their child, perceived role restriction and not knowing what their role is. Maybe I'm the provider or whatever it may be. I don't play. I don't know how to play. Competence, which is a big piece too. And not knowing, like, Mo, you do it best. I'm not the one to do this. We'll just do more sessions with you. So how to handle things like this and form attachment. But then also some social isolation, especially in parenting, and not being able to feel the need to express or feel the need, but not knowing where or how. And so one more piece with caregiver stress, and that, yeah, social support. So mothers find more of their support systems through social supports, where fathers, was reported, spousal support and social acceptance of their child. And so another piece that we'll kind of talk about is how to begin this. And one way that we will go into is looking at giving them maybe even a parent stress index test, which can sometimes be helpful for kind of just like saying, hey, this is going to be hard. It's going to seem like a lot of work at first. I support you as much as I support my client or your loved one. And so knowing this, that we need to build a therapeutic alliance, which is so hard, especially knowing that we're going to have different styles, and that's okay. And knowing caregivers, their interests are just important for authentic interaction. And so we just need to understand that each person has a different style of play, as I mentioned. And sometimes it's not even music. So how do we do that? First, we need to look at this. We have to then understand our relationships at 2 different levels. It's a lot of work. So these triadic interactions happen. And so we need to understand how our coaching behaviors and responses change under stress in the moment, and knowing that about ourselves and knowing that's going to happen with them too. So these observable patterns that are happening, but then there's a non-observable and internal processes. So what are they feeling? How can we look at this? This is so much information that we're trying to do while we're doing our music therapy sessions. And so we need to just know that this is more work, including the caregiver. And so our next slide shows how we use, here are some reflective practices for kind of a coaching strategy, so the openness, objectivity, and observation. And so if we look at reflective practices and how they can help us take, a deep breath and just be as understanding that this new normal is so weird and different, and we're just putting it out there. We're being open about it. Let go of your judgments. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. We'll talk a little bit about that. Objectivity, the ability to sense like what they're feeling, and knowing that what they're doing and portraying is not who they are. It's really where we are in this moment. And then just trying to observe the best we can to enable ourselves to see each other clearly. And so we're going to go back first into this in action. So here are some more strategies. So these are ongoing. Okay, this is harder than the next one. So bear in mind, this is what we do all the time as music therapists. And it's coaching, it takes time to learn before feeling comfortable in person. So now over the screen, it is much harder to pick up total communication. But by coaching, we can begin to foster reflective practice in the moment to kind of help the caregivers be able to be the ones who are reflecting when I'm not there. For instance, I was in a session and I saw that the child was looking out the window so much, and I was like, but then was kind of like moving away towards it, which was then away from the screen. And so I had to say, hey, I wonder if we close the window for now, if that will take away some of the visual stimuli, and that will help us to be able to really focus on what we're doing in this moment. And so this involves, you can read all the involvements that happens, the internal dialogue and judgments happen. But because this may be a whole new learning experience for the caregiver, and depending on who their loved one may be, it's also a good time to coach them by giving them permission to take breaks and to fill their cup, and knowing that's okay. And then we can just take a time to reflect. Okay, so then we have on action. So this is a really great way that I've looked at, which is part of that reflection, which is so important. What worked? What didn't work? Asking the caregiver, what did you like about it? Was it about, you know, how blank? And then, you know, they might say what they really liked, and maybe it was like, oh, they kept saying there was a lot of great language, which is excellent. And so I might then focus on the interaction of what I see. I really enjoyed how they kept looking up at you to see your reaction when you change their rhythm. So it was really kind of it's another way that we can prep to reflect, beginning by modeling. And so having them create videos is also a great way where they can then reflect with them in the session. And so this can help prepare the caregiver and then also avoid them being overwhelmed. And so providing a little bit of expectations. So this is everything that we're taking into consideration, and just focus really on, we're taking into consideration the individual's everything. So their profile, right? And how do we apply understanding to treatment? And so my goal for the caregiver may not align with my own goals. They might want academic goals, and mine can be more interaction, because I know that will help us be able to have processes and experiences where we're really then working on that, you know, academic goal. Just thinking of it in a new way of playing to be able to support that. And so we know our goal for the individual right now, you know, first and foremost priority, connect, enjoy interactions, and try to keep them moving up their ladder. So we're not losing those skills, especially while we're in our social distancing. So then we need to understand the caregiver, and we know that their goal is, you know, their loved ones are, we need to understand what their goals are for their child or for their loved one. And then we need to understand our own, and knowing how this and these interact with individual, caregiver, and then the impact of our treatment. So, because ultimately our goal is to support the caregiver goals as a means of supporting the dyad. And so we might have our goal for the caregiver then be to apply understanding to these interactions. So helping them teach why I'm so focused on them looking at me, or why am I so focused on you know, being able to go back and forth so quickly, or have all these circles of communication. I can then kind of help elaborate a little bit more and teach, and then we can do a little bit of, you know, balance between teaching and reflecting and modeling. So it's a dance for sure. So let's go to more strategies. So I just want to give you as many strategies as I've learned. And so, you know, get the caregiver speaking first. So how do we take their temperature? So some open-ended questions could be, you know, highs and lows for the week. If you notice they're uncomfortable, you know, they're probably uncomfortable doing this, and making sure we say, you know, I hear your hesitation. The reason I'm asking is to help support your challenges as well. Or another way to address it would be, you know, the reason I'm asking is to see how I can musically support you in this area. And an example was like, well, since Elle has an incredible imagination, which I emphasized her strength, I wonder how we can help her express some frustrations or reactions to not seeing her friends through songwriting together today. And so even with a 24-year-old, this was. But I've also done it with some kids. It's more, you know, I've had to go back to some semi-structured, because we have to start there. So we feel organized and we all feel like we're on the same playing field. And so again, listen and emphasize. We're not fixing, we're coping. So, you know, just more on empathy. You know, no one is born with all the preparation needed. So these are things I tell them throughout our sessions to help with their confidence. These are things I wish I was told as I was a music therapist. And I had a wonderful, wonderful internship supervisor. So she did, I'm sure. But, you know, you focus on the others. But anyways, you know, parents may feel in particular guilty not knowing how to play. And so music can be a whole other way that, you know, addresses this if they're comfortable or uncomfortable. So, you know, just knowing that some skills and addressing come naturally, some don't. And many skills we just have to learn, and we're learning right now. And some aspects of caregiving will be instinctive. And so even, you know, if you have parents, so this happens to me a lot where, you know, the parent, I see that the client has a really great connection to dad. And then when mom tries to get in, she's directing and he will shut down. So I have to kind of tell her, it's okay, because I know I can see her face when her son doesn't want to play with her, but will play with dad. And so it's like, it's okay. We all have different things we want to play with and ways to interact. Okay, so here are some more coaches. So just restating, that provides an opportunity, you know, to check in, make sure I hear correctly, such as what I'm hearing is you're saying this because ... And so by doing this, it sounds that it has been a challenging week for you. So this leaves open some room for them to elaborate and talk a little bit more and kind of express a little bit more, so we can then also emphasize and be able to understand what's happening on the other side of the screen. So notice and describing, so that would be, I noticed he keeps looking out the window. Like I said, I wonder if we closed it to reduce the visual stimuli, we'll get better attention. Again, another piece like that. Wonder aloud. So I wonder why they keep looking at your face. And a mom actually said to me, well, I'm wearing a lot more makeup today than usual. And so I was like, well, I noticed that, you know, it seemed that when you kept looking at him with your affect, that there was a lot of great communication happening and you sustained attention for over 7 minutes. And so just kind of even more modeling how affect is a big piece of it. And sometimes we don't know it. And I didn't know it too until I was on a screen. So some preface, you know, we're doing this together. You know more about your loved one. And two, research does say that we can tell caregivers what to do, but for generalization, we are trying to help caregivers by coaching them to pick up these subtle cues that are within this real dynamic dance we're doing in the moment. So we're, again, balancing between teaching and reflecting and really iso-principling everybody all the time. So a couple other things, probing. So just asking some why. So many dynamics, yes. And so it's a lot to think about. So that's why reflection can be a really great tool too, videos, etc. You know, just some open-ended questions we can ask if, you know, they might say something, oh, I like that. Oh, what did you like about it? Again, but I love this wait, watch, and wonder, W's, power in the pause. So you can't see my face, but you could probably see it in my picture of the individual based on affect, that I will sometimes, you know, again, presume competence, and I will wait, and because we're waiting for things to happen, processing, you know, anticipation, and then it's so cool when they finally close that circle and complete that circle in some way, and then I'm just like, oh wow, even more motivation and hype that I provide, try to hype, like a big yay. And so, you know, just kind of giving up the ownership of what the outcome may be. So knowing that this expectation for therapy might look different, and it might look different for them of what they thought we were doing in the clinic, which it is, because I did so much improv. I'm like, okay, with all these beautiful instruments. And so, yeah, I think that's also important to note, that we have different expectations. We're being creative. So then we're asking ourselves too, things like being cognizant of timing. So is this really the right moment? I don't want to interrupt the flow happening when I help model or coach or whatever it may be. And so also, especially, when should the individual that, you know, the loved one be present too? And this is vital to know, you know, when speaking about someone, you know, as if they're not in the room, that can be very damaging and disrespectful. So even if there's no harmful intent, mostly this is something where I use the we. Hey, we're doing this. Yeah, look at that. We're doing it. Good. Wow, I saw his, or, you know, I sometimes have to sometimes go to pronouns so I can really be in detail of how I can communicate what I'm trying to, like all the information I'm trying to say. So just being cognizant of feelings of the individual being spoken about while in the room, and whether, maybe a phone call might be more conducive to this conversation is something else. Or even having parents sometimes use, or caregivers use headphones, so I can kind of like coach them over their headphones. So it's another creative technique. So yes, just things with timing and consideration, how we're wording things, how we're responding. We're all, doing our best with what our resources at the moment. So knowing that, hey, how are we going to approach this when we don't have the answers? And knowing it's okay. We're, again, learning. And so let's move into, some discussion on, beforehand, having the caregivers state their needs and priorities. So we're kind of asking him in the first, what was challenging about the week? What went well? What are some goals that you have? And then, some goals I've been working on have been shifted to just regulation and sharing and play in their interaction. And so, if instruments aren't available, using, their body, or whatever instruments, we know are their favorites, putting those within a 20-second reach is a good way to do it. And giving caregivers permission to have their client, again, take breaks. It's okay to take breaks to fill your cup. Even if it's okay, now you can let them have the iPad for 5 minutes or 3 minutes. It's okay, we're in survival mode. So again, this might look like more work, and it is. And so here are some other tips that we found to be pretty helpful, some summaries. So just a summary for you, larger the screen, the better. Open up discussion beforehand so you can gauge their emotional temperature. Prepare them the best you can to know what their role is, and then knowing too that they understand that I'm focusing on the interaction, but I am taking into consideration your goals as well, and your priority, your needs. Yeah, again, I think we've done most of this, but again, if hesitant to do live sessions, encourage to videotape, and especially times that are challenging, and then we can, use part of our session for reflecting on it together.
Oops.
So I'll let Emily take it away with some telehealth hurdles.
Yeah, so I don't think I need to tell everybody that this is a difficult time. This is really weird. And it's this very unique, shared, strange experience, and that everyone that I have talked to in all different generations can all agree that this is like nothing we've ever seen before in our lifetime. And so we are facing a lot of unexpected hurdles. And just an example of what I have seen in my practice and kind of how we are getting around that, there always are, of course, technical difficulties. Maybe you can't see the screen of the person that's talking, or a lot of times people, if I am doing a group, people won't turn on their screen, or they don't know how, and it can be so difficult to gauge how the session is going when you can't see, and you're not physically there with them. I want to encourage everyone to also think about what your clients have access to, because I was originally thinking, oh, we can't go in person. Well, that's okay, because we have the computer and we can reach everyone through the internet, but not everyone has availability, not everyone has access to the internet or even to a computer. In a facility that I am working in currently, we started out trying to do live telehealth sessions over Zoom. Come to find out later that this facility, this residential home, actually doesn't even have a computer, and they were kind of relying on one of their staff to come in with a tablet, and then about half of the session was spent trying to connect and then reconnect and figuring out why they couldn't hear me and trying to connect with them, and it was very difficult. And realizing afterwards later that they actually didn't even have a computer in their house, and that made everything so much more difficult. But what do they have? So they have a TV and a DVD player. And so what we have done, we kind of had to get creative, and I know that Mo's been doing this as well with some of her clients, is that I just did a pre-recorded session. And going back to, I hate the way that my voice sounds. Oh, this is so strange. And it is at first. To record yourself, I put it into a video, we burn them onto a DVD, and then deliver them to this facility so that they have something that they can interact, they can still have music. And of course, the caregiver part is so important, of including in these videos how the caregivers can also interact, and oh, these are the instruments that we can use in this, and if you don't have any instruments, here are some suggestions, including the caregiver, and including always that encouragement, which feels very strange to do when you're just recording yourself and you're just looking at yourself, but it can be very important. So I encourage everyone to think about what your clients have access to, because that is something that I honestly had not considered. Lack of engagement. This is also, when you're sitting in front of a screen, what are you usually doing? You're staring at it, and that's unfortunately what I saw with a lot of my clients when we first started, and it's hard to get everyone as engaged when you have the screen in between you. And that is where I think putting the caregiver in as well is just so important. Going back to this slide back here, the reason that we have found that the shorter sessions work is because it is a lot for everybody, really, to sit in front of a computer for an hour. So we found that the clients that I would normally see in person for an hour, 50 minutes, we see them for about half that time, and they are much more engaged, and we kind of before they can get too worn out from the session. Meltdowns. This one is interesting because this is actually something that I have just started seeing in some of my clients, and I am still working on. What can you do when a client has a meltdown? In my case, the client actually just left the room and didn't want to come back, but I'm just sitting here in my living room. What can I do when there's no client in front of the screen? And again, bringing the caregiver in can be so helpful. With this client, it was very helpful to have Mom in the room, and it was so much fun to be able to get her to play with us. And going back to what Mo was talking about play as well, long story short, on Zoom, there is a function where you're able to draw, and we used that, and we were just drawing, and we just went back to playing and really emphasizing like what he wanted to do. And so we were able to integrate that play. We were able to write a theme song for the person that he drew. He drew this little octopus man. He named it Emily. I'm not going to take it personally. But so, and this kind of also goes into recognizing caregiver limits, because there have also been, I think it's hard to explain. This is, like I said, hard for everybody. And we don't always know what our clients or our caregivers are going through. We know what we see, but there's so much more than just what we see. And so I did have a client kind kind of recently, I think the quarantine has kind of started catching up to everybody, and it all just became a lot. It just became too much. And the mother said, I'm sorry, but we just can't this week. We're just gonna have to cancel. And as much as we want to help, because we're therapists, that's what we do, we're helpers. We want to help, but being able to step back and say, okay, I know that if this is what you need right now, we will give you that space. And whenever you are ready, we will be here for you. And that helped a lot. This week was much better with this client. Also, at the beginning of all of this quarantine, that's also something that we saw a lot, was that people were very overwhelmed because no one really knew what was going on. This is a huge change. This is a huge shift. And it was very unexpected. And like I said, as therapists, we are helpers. We want to help, and we know that we have this really cool service that we can provide, this really cool, really beneficial service that we can provide. And what I first saw when we first started switching over from live to telehealth, or from in-person, I should say, to telehealth, was that people were so overwhelmed with everything that was happening and all of the changes that were happening all at once, that it was easier for them to say no. And it was easier for them to kind of decline services. And as frustrating and as discouraging as that really was, because I know how beneficial that this could be for those consumers, we have to realize that they have control of so little in their life right now. So many things are happening that we just don't have control over. And to give them the control, at least to say no, can be very empowering. To say no for the time being, and to step back and say, okay, as hard as it is, to say, okay, we will be here for you when you need us, and just letting them have that space was actually very helpful. I noticed that in the couple of weeks afterwards, after people had time to process this change, and people started realizing, oh, we're probably going to be stuck in our house a lot longer than we thought. People started kind of coming around and saying, oh, I think we're going to try this, and we're going to start this. And it's been an interesting switch, but I am so grateful that we at least have this platform. We're living in a time now where we have this platform that we're able to still be connected to everybody, even though we can't be like with each other. And finally, caregivers hesitant to engage in the session. And I think Mo talked a lot about this. The caregivers that are afraid because they don't know, they're not sure how to play, or they're afraid that they're going to do it wrong. Which I would say there's no wrong way to play, right? And so giving anyone really wants is validation, right? And to know that what we're doing is good. And so to give that validation not only to the client, but also to the caregivers, so that they're able to just focus on being with, maybe it's their child or their family member or whoever it is, and not being in their head of, oh no, am I doing this right? And to just have a lot of encouragement for the caregiver as well as the client, to have a successful session. Okay, I don't want to go on too long because I want to get into, I know we have a discussion, we have opportunities for questions. Mo, is that what you wanted to do next?
I'm off mute. Yes, if you want to share an experience with others, this is kind of just a time to share and support one another, or ask questions too. Definitely, this is really difficult, but we do have about 20 minutes in order to do that. And what we don't get to, we can definitely try to at least find answers if we don't know them, or of course we can try to get to them at a later time.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely been I mean, there's no manual for this, right? So if anyone wants to share anything that's been successful for them, we are all learning, I think, from each other during this time for sure.
Yeah, I can, if there's nothing there, I can talk a little bit about my no-go signals where, you know, where they're just like, nope, not gonna do it. I don't know what to do. And so, you know, what I've kind of done is just say, okay, well, what about, let's try to do some representational play or something like that. Just more like, hey, what's it like when you take a bath, if it's for a child, or what's it like when you go to the beach? You know, how is that transition now that we can finally go to the beach, or take a walk, or when we receive our groceries, how do we clean the groceries? And things like that. So, or when the packages come, you know, and looking at those natural events are still ways that we can then, you know, look at play. It doesn't, an interaction with, you know, helping fold the laundry, or, and then making it into a math game where we're then going to like throw, and sensory motor as well, if we throw the socks in and we count them or whatever it may be. But there's so many different ways we can do that. And I like to say that we're kind of taking a page from improv. And I don't know if anyone's seen or read the book Bossy Pants by Tina Fey, but just knowing that there are no mistakes, just learning opportunities and kind of just saying, I hear you, yes, and. So just kind of making statements reflecting, you know, that, yeah, no, I think this has definitely been a switch, which is also a book. Switch is a big book, New York Times, and you can get it as an audiobook about finding kind of the bright spots in places. And so, you know, how to change things when change is hard is kind of what it's about. So what I've kind of done too in these times is I have also, just one more quick thing, I work with he's a man, he's in his early 30s, paraplegic, has a seizure disorder, and it has pretty much been abandoned by his parents. So I have to, and he's in his own apartment with caregiving 24/7, and he doesn't have any internet. And so because of that, I've had to be very creative in how I create my videos, so he's not going to fall asleep on them, because he's on so much medication that he really, like, even when I'm in person live giving him vibrations with my guitar and doing interactive games, it's still been a very difficult to keep him motivated and engaged. So a couple of things I've done was really use I've used my dog. He liked those the best. I've used my different virtual backgrounds, and then I just put a different virtual background on and record myself. And the quality isn't as good, but you know, he asked for 90s hip hop. And so, and it was kind of like a name that tune. So I put in my background, like the Fugees, and then I played a song, and then he had to guess it. So it's still like, even though I was interacting with the screen, but you know, definitely I had to be very creative, especially because I usually see him for an hour and a half twice a week. So, and other things I've done, I guess, to kind of spice it up, I've done like Beatles Bingo, where I'm sharing my screen and I'll play, and then they have to guess which one, and they might see, you know, icons of the different songs, like hands for I Want to Hold Your Hand for Beatles Bingo, and, you know, a heart for All You Need Is Love, the Yellow Submarine for that, and then just kind of going with it. And, you know, I've done things too where, of course, you can't post to YouTube recorded music. However, you can on a DVD. And on a DVD, what I've learned to do, because we do a lot of like upper body motor movement, is I put on he goes to the Technotronics that pump up the jam. And I tell him, okay, take your pepper shaker and salt shaker. We got 2 arms, we're gonna move. And I kind of model myself in the mirror. And then I have the actual video of Pump Up the Jam going, just to kind of help create some stimulation. So now this might not be appropriate, of course, for anybody else, or it's just, we have to look at their individual differences, meet them where they're at, see what their support system is like. Emily, in a lot of her videos too, especially, they're generally adults
Yes.
that are nonverbal in, you know, they're wearing diapers, they're in wheelchairs, and
It's very limited movement as well.
and they didn't have internet. So what Emily did was she even coached the caregivers on the video and saying, hey, you know, N really likes this instrument. Why don't you try this? And maybe you'll get a reaction. So it was kind of like a coaching video. We don't know if they're doing it or not because there is a language barrier there, but we are, again, just doing our best.
We've done all that. Yes, we have done all that we can do. And I think it's hard right now for people because we're all kind of in this, I feel like, survival mode, where I realize sometimes I'll step back and I'll be like, I didn't really get to say, you know, maybe they're not, you know, talking to us because, you know, I haven't received any feedback as to whether or not they're using the videos, but they may appreciate it more than they are able to say, is what I'm saying. We at least know that we have done everything that we are able to do and that we have provided this. So we have a couple comments on chat here. I'm glad this has been very helpful for everybody. Mo, are you able to see the chat as well? Yeah.
I'm glad this has been, very helpful. Working with an adult man with ASD, and sessions have been put on hold. Understanding the need of the caregiver has been helpful. So as they have not been interested in telehealth sessions yet. And, you know, this also, I think, goes for the next comment about this being very helpful, having a situation, again, where there's a hard time with involving the mother, and mother feeling very stressed with being so hands-on and is controlling the communication. And so in these times when they're just canceling, we get cancellations, it is a no-go and they're firm about it, we're accepting them. So what we've tried to do then is provide other options. Other options have been putting together, because when I first went telehealth, I had no clients. They were not responding to me, and it hurt me because I've been working with them for nearly 8 years. And actually, no, 10 years. Oh my gosh. And so it still hurts that I haven't heard from some of them. And that's also part of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with like that loss of connection. And so what we've done is I just put out a free group, and I know we can't always do free things for free, but I just want some connection of like, and I call it my music works as Mozarts. And I just said, hey, here is just an opportunity to come. It's not going to be individualized, so you're not focusing on the coaching. However, it's a group social experience that, you know, maybe we can just kind of see how they're responding to the music, and then I can see kind of what is working, what's not, and then say, hey, do you want to do, you know, even a 15-minute trial or something like that. Things like that. Providing resources has been really actually a priority when I was going through the lull of nobody really responding. And some of the resources we'll put at the very end. And that's, I wrote a song about zones of the zones of regulation curriculum. And I think if you hover over it, it'll show it. I had to call it regulation through colors and music so I could post it and it didn't get taken down. And so that one is a great one for helping with calming down. And then also it addresses, you know, our emotions through colors and knowing we want to get back to the green zone. Here's a way we can calm down. And I actually should have shared, I have a video of my niece. I don't know if I can share that. She's only halfway clothed, doing the hand tapping and the counting and the breathing. And it was so fun to see that. So it really has been something that I think is really a good resource. And then also, if it might seem like a little too kiddie, there is this one, and I don't know if the link went in there, but it's called I Can Handle This. And it's more for the older person that, and I'd say older, like just doesn't want like a bunch of kiddie stuff of how to calm down. So the pictures are more like for, I'd say teen, young adults even. I've sent it to my parents, the parents of a lot of my clients, and they have loved it because they use it and put it on every once in a while throughout.
Mo, we got a really good question. When caregiver says right now, not right now, how long do you wait to ask again?
Yeah, no, that is a
Good question of
great,
recognizing that
yeah,
caregivers' boundaries in their space.
yeah. Oh, that's great.
I
I would
know
love
in my experience, if it's someone that we've already established, we've started sessions with them already, and they're just like canceling for the day, I will give them options of, well, I am available at this time, and this time during the week, and let me know. I usually I don't know about the rest of you, but I text usually my families. That's just the best method of communication with them. And if we aren't able to reschedule right then, they're able to um, text me and say, we have this time available. Mo, I don't know about you, if you have a different.
Yeah, so it was really difficult. It was really hard. So I started with once a week, and it just was kind of
Yeah.
like a quick email checking in, letting everyone know when it first happened, because we didn't know how long it was going to be. So I did call and have a conversation, and they picked up and they were really grateful. Like, they're going to see what happens. But it's, again, it was, a very hard situation because I was so connected. I saw not only their older son who has Down syndrome autism, but also I saw the mother too for piano lessons. And that was like our bond. We had a huge bond. And, I started then after that conversation when they're like, well, we'll ask and we'll see and we'll kind of play it by ear. When I got that phone call, I'm like, oh, this is a shoo-in. But then I sent an email, no response. And then I didn't want to do too much because I was like, it was after Easter. I'm like, hey, and I knew that they, celebrated probably online on the holiday or something like that. So I'm like, maybe they're learning how to, use this technology. And I just want to check in and see how your Easter was. Hope you're doing well. And I just left it open-ended. It wasn't even like I can still do services, and otherwise it does add that basic piece of pressure. So what we've been kind of thinking too, another way to do this is to offer what would be important or helpful right now, like a support group, like a this or that type of option, like maybe just even a support group where you can just check in or call in. And you can talk with other people, and we can kind of talk and navigate this as just a way to support the caregiver, honestly, because that is, definitely, it's a lot more stress. They're saying, I don't want my kid on any more screen time, but it's like, how can we then help them not understand, but learn the ways that we can help with their interactions that might overall help them in their times when they're trying to, take a bath, brush their teeth, wash their hands even, wash your hands all the time, wear a mask. These things that come up, it could be another way to kind of approach this. And so, whenever you're ready, I'll be here.
Absolutely.
I understand it's difficult. Yep, and we are adjusting, exactly. Yeah.
And I agree with that. This comment says, I usually check in with clients at the start of each week. I agree with that. Usually like a weekly check-in can be very beneficial. If they do continue to say no, which I do still have some facilities that I've checked in with multiple times and they're not really getting back to me, but just like Mo said, just how can we help, and less focusing on, I have this, and like just trying to, it can almost seem, we don't want to seem pushy, right? That's what we're afraid of. Just saying, how can I help you, and leave it much more open-ended. And this is something that, what is something that we can do to help you? We just want to make sure that you are okay. Yeah. Good. Relevant. DIR floor time as relevant and beneficial in hospice. Yeah. I think that would be really cool, especially with involving caregivers as well. I can see that as being very beneficial. Mo, I'm sure you agree.
Yes, I believe I do DR floor time everywhere. I do it on my husband. I do it, in just situations where I have to just really look at my interactions, what my face might say versus how it may appear. It might, just trying to boost the morale a little bit, even when I go out to the store, and knowing that I'm just, we're all kind of stressed right now still because we're just stir crazy. And so, so I think definitely,
Yeah, and so we also had the question of going back to hospice music therapy, that this person is noticing their sessions are running shorter than normal. Has anyone else experienced this in telehealth? Yeah, with my populations, yes, everyone seems to kind of lose that focus and lose momentum after a certain amount of time. And we have been doing shorter sessions. Mo, I'm sure you've seen this as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, the shorter sessions for sure. Really, you're doing improv when you meet someone. Because I honestly stopped planning ahead a long time ago for my sessions. I have goals, of course, and I know them really well. But in terms of planning ahead, it's hard because sometimes we have to, and especially now, I feel it's more conducive to what we're dealing with. We need to actually plan ahead a little bit more, so we can feel that we are really, giving the parents or the person even an idea of what to expect, because that is going to help, I think, alleviate the stress. Other things that I've also said in terms of this will help with the stress of the caregiver is also then I would just kind of say, hey, we're just going to start with the basics. I just want basic, let's play together, let's jam a little bit, let's do a little bit of call and response, let's do a little bit, I just want to see some interaction. And that's my goal for this. My goal is interaction, and just kind of being with me in this moment together, because then we can really start working a little bit more on our relationship, which I think which of course is hard during this time, but we need to then not let that diminish in these times too, because we all need connection, we all need these relationships. And I think that when we can just start at the basics, lower expectations, help to kind of just say, let's do this. It's going to be a little more work maybe at first, but because it's different, but not, I'm going to lower my expectations for what this course could offer, or what this session could offer, and how we're going to navigate it. And then I think too, if they say, yeah, we've just been having a hard time doing those opening discussions, like just seeing, hey, I'm seeing that, or noticing there are some challenges, and so I'm sure some challenges are coming up, and then being able to ask what's been a high and a low, or what's been a challenging way that I can help support you. And perhaps that could be another way to kind of just navigate that situation. So is the I can handle this video popping up by chance when on the link? I want to take away the link.
It yeah, it looks like the link for some reason might not have gotten copied in.
Okay, I'm putting it on now. All right.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
I'll go to my presentation. Again, here are some other resources. And let me go to.
And thank you all so much for your questions and your comments.
Yeah, this doesn't stop here. We are doing this every day. This has definitely been a learning curve and situation for all of us. So this is absolutely something that we actually as a company have looked at us really having to potentially just move to telehealth in 2020 and just kind of go with it, because we don't know exactly what to expect. And so kind of keeping that in mind, that this might be a little bit longer, it might come in ebbs and flows. And so knowing that we will definitely continue to provide help and support. We do at MusicWorks involve clinical supervision too. So I do work with individuals who and clinicians on Zoom and help them navigate personally what they're experiencing, which is sometimes in their in their, maybe even telehealth wise now, especially with neurodevelopmental differences, and also rehabilitation. I forgot that level 2 we do as well. So let me see if that went in. All right. I don't know if you have to refresh it.
I would have to.
Okay, we don't want
refresh.
Let me put it in the chat.
In the chat would really help. And so as we're going to put that in the chat as we are kind of running out of time. But thank you so much to everyone that attended. There we go. There's our link there. And we do have webinars and roundtables going all the way into next week, and wellness sessions as well on our MusicWorks Facebook page. So I encourage you to check those out. Tomorrow, we have a webinar at 9 o'clock, and we also have a CMTE from 4 to 5 about burnout and self-care. And the webinar at 9 o'clock tomorrow is a salutogenic approach to music therapy. So I think those are both going to be really cool. You don't want to miss them. We have, like I said, webinars and roundtables all through next week as well. So I encourage you all to attend as much as you can. And we thank you so much for taking the time to listen and discuss with us today.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes. And I look forward to hearing from you, and please let me know if there are any questions, and check out all those fun websites.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here with us. Okay. All right. Sorry, as I get my all my technology figured out here. We're going to stop recording. All right. Thank you, everybody.
I'm glad it was relaxing.
Yes, we're glad it was.
I got those videos too. They might be relaxing as well. It's my voice.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Are we finished recording?